Welcome back, Warriors. Back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2 and 1% Club. Hope you guys are doing well. We just did one on Trust in the Journey, so thanks again for DH. And now I'm going to go into the second part of the one on Metaphysics of Sexual Energy, Part 2. And this comes from Rhys Fifield, who had a great question on this. And I'm hoping I'm helping you with my answer to it. And certainly if there's any other questions you have on it, let me know. Once again, subscribe, like, comment. I'm taking a lot of things that you guys are saying and commenting on those. Then the next one I'm going to end up doing is talking about ADHD and retention, and also trying to focus on one of Alan Tanner's talking about if other people are against you, you must be right. Okay? So we'll kind of do a few of those and kind of keep moving. So the metaphysics, sexual energy 2. So let's go back a little bit and summarize part 1. What we're talking about, guys, and this comes from some very interesting stuff that I've been kind of looking at when it comes to the metaphysics of sex and all of that. The question, guys, is to look at yourself and look at other species. And you look at us as well, that the purpose for us in this case is to procreate and continue to have our offspring on and move ahead with offspring so that our generation doesn't go away. That's why it's important to keep your generation of families, things going. And so that's why you end up having children, to keep those generations going. But remember, we're still all made of energy and matter. And therefore, that energy and matter can't be destroyed. It's just transferred. So the question then becomes is that why have we gotten to the point where all of a sudden we've gotten away from just a basic role? When you look at, animals, and I think it's a prime type of thing. They don't have the emotional type of level that we have. And so when they look at things, they're not so much interested in just having, one night stands. They want to have procreation, and that's it, right? They move ahead with it, and it's all done, and they move on, okay? But the idea that we have is that we're looking at something that is more of a fixed behavior, almost like gambling, almost like drugs. And actually, this is sex addiction and can be a drug. And so the energy you create really is not meant for all those type of things. Not meant to having one night stands, to have orgies, to have a high body count. All those things, that's not meant to have that. Our bodies basically are producing enough, semen, enough of those type of things to help with having children. But it's not in the case of trying to just kind of expend it away. And that becomes a detriment to people. Now, we got in a society around, we've been told that all these things are healthy and that you should be very liberal with your body and all that. Well, as we can see, it's hurting both men and women right now. A lot of women are, when they hit the age of 30, 35, they're struggling to find good men because men have been taught to not be strong. And females have tried to be masculine, and men don't want that either. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation you're seeing out there. And in the meantime, the body count's going higher and higher for people, and that's draining them even more and more. And so when you look at this whole situation, you realize that, all of this is for what purpose? The purpose people have with this energy, they use it, is because it raises your dopamine. So when people actually release, they raise their dopamine. And those levels become addictive. It's the same thing when you're doing drugs. Anything that has any sort of level of excitement that you have to expend, you're going to end up having higher levels of dopamine. But when it comes to behaviors like this, now you're looking at, I have to recreate that dopamine. This is why when you look at pictures, you might be satisfied one time with that. The next time you look at that, it doesn't mean anything to you. Now you have to get more excited. And so it goes at higher level. And now you're doing even more than that. And so it becomes an extreme case. And then you see then a lot of people doing a lot of kinky and, screwy behaviors because of that too. Because all of a sudden now they're at the point where now they have to get a higher level of dopamine to be excited. And then you see people who go to violent behaviors. Caligula, we said before, is a Roman emperor that, sex was very open and easy, but that wasn't enough dopamine. All of a sudden now they had to have more and more, and now it became violence and all these other types of things because the excitement level had to be satiated. It was too much. And this is what ends up happening, but it's in the imagination that we're talking about here. The energy level is going to be the same. If you keep it in the chakras and you're not allowing that energy level, your imagination, to let that energy level go up, then you're not going to lose the dopamine. And the dopamine will be transferred back to where it should be in accomplishing things. Guys, we are hit with so many stimuli out there that it's easy for us to go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and create my imagination, and now I have a high level of dopamine. The fantasy is what creates it. And that's why a lot of people, when they end up meeting in real life, people who are in movies, they're not excited. It's a downer, disappointment. Or when you see a person without the makeup, it's a real disappointment. Because you have a fantasy going on there with your imagination, and that's what's creating higher levels of dopamine. So like any kind of addiction, it's very difficult. And this is why you see violence and other types of behaviors. You ever wonder why rich people end up having a lot of interesting types of quirks and different types of behaviors? What happens because they have access to regular type of sex all the time, now they want more and more. And now they look at people as objects because they've got to get that dopamine level higher. We talk about what's behind all the energy. Remember, guys, the energy really is in your body. It's being formed. And the body will say, okay, it's time to create offspring, if you're male or female. So now I look for partners to actually have an offspring. What you do after that really is more of the emotional aspect of it. And some men and women can be very emotional, some cannot. But when you start clouding everything with the idea that you're telling your body you're going to procreate every time you meet this person, well, the whole focus is going to be on procreation. And if you don't want to have children, well, then it creates a huge barrier. And this is why people get a lot of depression and anxiety, because they're losing a lot of energy. They're not really fulfilling the purpose that it was intended for. And all they're going into is trying to create higher and higher levels of dopamine. And so that's why when people get very intimate when they first meet each other, it's all great and exciting. But then the second time, and the third time, and the fourth time, and onward, they have to do more and more and more to have the same level of excitement. And now it gets kind of boring if you don't do that. And so now you're doing a lot of crazy behaviors, and people tend to, build drama in their relationships. They build tension. They call it sexual tension. They don't even realize they're doing that because they don't want to get bored. And you have to get away from using that sexual energy just for pleasure, because that energy was made for you to procreate. This is the fallacy we have in the world going on. People want to go ahead and say, okay, we're using it for pleasure. This is what happened in the Roman Empire. Now, there's no wonder why we're having some of the same kind of problems now as they did back in the Roman Empire, or they had in Incas, or the Greeks, Babylon, Sodom and Gomorrah. Is it no different than that? Yeah, there was different technology, different things going on, but guys, people are the same. The same lascivious, corrupt behaviors occurred back then, thousands of years ago. So why are we any different? We're not any different. People are the same. People have the same sort of body structures. The things have not changed. Maybe size has changed. Maybe some of that's changed over the years. But guys, the way people think, the way they act, their internal sexual energy has not changed. It's still a creation from God. And if you're looking at trying to use your temple as a temple, you're not going to put anything inside a temple that's going to hurt your temple. or do anything, you're going to lose your energy. And this is why, no matter what people are saying out there, you have to be very clear to yourself that you're losing energy when you conduct yourself in these ways. And that's why it's very important to kind of look at yourself and say, how can I really use this energy in a way that's going to be very effective for me? Being on my goal, being on my purpose, and finding the right kind of person I want to be with, and not fool around with all these other types of things that are going to lead me down a bad path of destruction. And that's the key, guys, because there's so many negative things that can happen, right? From diseases, from jealous people, husbands, wives chasing you, all kinds of problems. For what? For what? A short-term pleasure that increases your dopamine. This is why people can't stop. This is why they struggle, because they've built a habit of this, because inside of them, their body's telling them it's time to procreate. And so you're lying to your body by saying, okay, I'm not really going to have a child. I'm just doing this for pleasure. And your body eventually will shut down. And this is why you have a lot of younger people having dysfunctional types of sexual behaviors, in my book at least. Because you can't be releasing 5-6 times a day. And even at a young age, you're going to end up, your body's going to tell you, you can't do this. I can't do this. Right? And no matter how much testosterone you have when you're younger, you're going to struggle. And that's why you have to be very careful about how you use that energy and where you're using it at. Because really, that's your life force that you're giving up. And just be aware that when you give your life force, that it should be something that's going to help benefit you and benefit society. And that was the purpose, guys. When we look at what's behind the picture of all this, it's your imagination that's creating the problem. You can control your imagination. Just like I can control phenomenology, you can control how strong and focused you are. Those type of things you can control. And when you look at those type of things, it's important to kind of look at whether or not you are really able to learn how to control that imagination so that you don't need to have intercourse with anybody you see, right? You don't need to go ahead and release your energy to anybody. And it's going to be tempting at times, right? You have so much energy built up. If you don't transmute it all the time, you're going to want to feel like, I'm going to go ahead and do something about this. But the key again, guys, is to control your behavior to the point where the energy is being used and filtered through your body in a positive way. But you got to start with your imagination. You cannot let the birds make a nest in your head. They may fly over. They may fly around you, buzzing around you. You know, look at me, warrior. Look at me, right? All these attractive people around you. But be strong. This is where the strength comes in. Because as your journey goes along, and I will say this, as a journey goes on, you get stronger. Keep it going. Because what you're going to get is a whole new world that you never thought was there. And that's really the way the world should be. All this other stuff is more things that people are trying to make profit off of you. By selling you things, right? By making you live a lifestyle that you think is right. No wonder so many people are depressed on medicine, pills. It all fits together if you look at it. Whether it's orchestrated or not, it just fits together. You know, people are depressed, they got to get pills, and there goes people making money on pills, right? You don't need 90% of the stuff. In my opinion, you don't need it at all. All you need is the stuff that's within your body. Now, there are emergency times where you're going to need help, of course. But you can take care of yourself as best you can up until that point in time. All right, so hopefully, Rhys, if I feel I've kind of given you some ideas. If you have a specific question on metaphysics, let me know. But hopefully, in part 1 and 2, I've kind of addressed some of these ideas. All right, guys, until next time, battle on.